Welcome back to Torsos of Desire, written by me, Nicole Beckley. This is episode 2, where I'll be reading pages 22 through 43. Just to give you a reminder about what happened previously, we met our unnamed narrator as she landed a job working in book jacket design for a romance novel publisher. Her goals: to excel at her job and to find love. She is derailed, though, when her iPhone breaks and she has to go to the Apple store to get it fixed. But that turn of events leads her to Paul, a very hot Apple store employee who helps her out, which is just where we've left off. Back to work. With my phone brought back from the brink of destruction, I felt like I had a new lease on life. I jumped over puddles, I double-tipped my barista, I refrained from jaywalking most of the way to work. There's one intersection where there are never any cars, and I can't just wait around like a dummy. At work, Carrie was in a mood I'd never seen her in before. Sure, I hadn't worked there that long, but how many moods can one person really have? She said she was feeling super stressed out about all the photo shoots that would be happening this week. She was pacing around and around all the desks and checking that the other assistants had scheduled the photographers and arranged for the proper equipment. As soon as she would talk to an assistant, they'd frantically make a bunch of phone calls. It was pretty fun to watch. Carrie said we had to make a checklist of all of C.J. Carlson's Buck Wild covers that would be shot this week. There was Buck Wild, Alaskan Heart, which was about a dog sled racer who falls in love with the owner of a ski resort. Buck Wild, Call of the Wild, which was about a wilderness man who falls in love with a park ranger. Buck Wild, 8 Seconds on Top, which was about a bull rider who falls in love with his manager. And Buck Wild, Dude Ranch, which was about a cowboy who falls in love with a city slicker. Jeez, where did they come up with these plots? Carrie said that CJ was incredibly particular and that it was going to be my job to make sure that each title had all the props that they needed. Finally, this was going to be my time to shine. I'd be able to show Carrie just how dedicated I was. Can my title be Prop Master, I asked? Or maybe it should be Prop Mistress, which sounds better. Carrie said she didn't care either way as long as the props showed up. I decided Prop Master was the way to go. That's what they call it in the theater. Carrie also told me that she had someone to introduce me to. I hoped it was Bruno Mars. I've always wanted to meet him. This is Sophie, Carrie said, and a girl with dark hair and bangs and glasses appeared. She was wearing a houndstooth patterned dress that seemed a little frumpy, but I tried not to judge her. It wasn't her fault she wasn't Bruno Mars. Sophie's going to be interning with us. She's a student at NYU in comparative literature. Comparative literature? I guess that meant she could tell me which would be better, Buck Wild, The Animal Kingdom, or Buck Wild, Hard Pressed. I hadn't read either of them. Sophie gave me a little nod and then scurried over to her desk. I've never really liked to scurry her, but it was her first day, so I cut her some slack. You'll be working very closely with Sophie. Make her feel at home, Carrie said. Great. An official coworker, a confidant, and possibly someone I could make do things for me. You got it, boss, I said. Before I left for the day, I put a wide-brimmed fedora on Sophie's desk, so maybe she'd look a little like Bruno Mars. Bankruptcy. I'd gone over to Karen's place because she said she was making margaritas, but then she insisted we play Monopoly, even though she knows I hate finance-based games. Geez, 1 minute you're cleaning up on Baltic Avenue, the next you're in jail for tax evasion. Can't even pass go and collect $200. At least not the way Karen plays. How can one person love Monopoly so much? It's unnatural. Karen told me I needed to quit whining and play like an adult. Easy to say when you own all the properties on the expensive side of the board. But I didn't care. I kept right on whining. Finally, Karen said maybe we should stop playing until one of us grew up. Fine, I said. I was willing to wait. Then Karen's phone rang, but she refused to answer it. She said that Richard had been calling her nonstop and leaving voicemails about how he loved her, and now what should she do? Call the police? Answer it, I said. It's probably not him. I didn't tell her that I was Richard. People like to feel like someone out there loves them, even if that person is an ex-con. Karen wanted to talk more about her problems, but I told her, look at the time, and made a big yawning noise and said we should do this again soon, but not too soon because I was really busy at work and also had an intern now, and they were going to be looking up to me, and it was going to be pretty exhausting getting up on a pedestal every day. Karen said she understood, but I doubted it because I don't think she'd ever been on a pedestal before. The date. Finally, I was feeling like a real power lady at work, like Sheryl Sandberg or Judge Judy. All morning, I'd been educating Sophie on how to ride around in the mail cart. She kept protesting that we should get back to the office and do our real work. But what could be more real than this? She'd catch on eventually. I was just deciding to take an extra long lunch when my phone buzzed. It was Paul from the Apple store. My heart started racing. I pictured his flowing dark hair, his blue t-shirt, his rock-hard chest under his blue t-shirt. I've always had a great imagination. What could he be calling about? Did he want to ask for my number? Didn't he realize he already had it? "It looks like you left your orange scarf at the store yesterday," he said. Of course, my scarf. I'd noticed a general draft in my neck area. "If you're able to come by after work, I'll have it for you." Calling a lady and telling her to drop by after work? This was clearly a date. I got so excited I ran straight into Bergdorf's. I was going to need a great date outfit. What do you wear to a date with a genius? Maybe some kind of pants. I found some high-waisted, wide-legged white pants and a soft teal camisole that wasn't so low-cut that it would be distracting. This was a guy who probably wanted to focus on my mind. I was too preoccupied to go back to work, so I decided to hang out at a tiki bar for a while. The bar was classic New York. Wooden tables, pineapple lanterns, waiters wearing grass skirts. They don't call it the Big Easy for no reason. They had a bunch of different drinks, like the Canadian Cannibal and the Sarasota Screw Loose. But I told the bartender I wanted something simple, preferably something that wasn't on fire. I was well into my third double rum Long Island Arnold Temple, Long Island iced tea, plus lemonade, plus a Shirley Temple, when I realized I needed to go. I would have been feeling nervous about seeing Paul, but I was mostly concentrating on trying to stand upright without holding on to something. These tiki bartenders were not messing around. I ambled as quickly as I could to the Apple store, but right when I got there, something lurched in my stomach. My mouth started foaming. All the fizz from those Arnold Temples gurgled up. A family of European tourists, each wearing matching black fanny packs, made direct eye contact with me, and before I knew it, I was retching all over them, and they were yelling, "Not on my iPad!" It was completely embarrassing. I mean, they were wearing fanny packs. Paul ran out of the store and saw what was happening. He put his strong hands around my arm. "Let's get you home," he said. "Your place or mine?" I tried to say, but it's really hard to be seductive while barfing. Really, the date. I'd never normally have a one-night stand. My old therapist would say that's because I'm the type of person who has a problem with letting go. But what does she know? She's really old. And besides, I stopped going to our appointments. After that, she called me all the time about money I owed her. She couldn't just let it go. Who has a problem now, Cheryl? It wouldn't be a one-night stand with Paul anyway. Sure, I was a little tipsy and it felt like my stomach was on the outside of my body, but I can remember most of the details. Even some I'm pretty sure weren't a dream. Like 70 to 80% sure. As I recall, after we got to my house, we messed around a little. In the kitchen. We made a real mess in the kitchen. There was flour everywhere and shredded coconut. Somehow Paul was making muffins. Also, he let me ride him. You know, like a horse. I got on his back while he crawled around and I yelled, "Yee-haw!" He was really quite strong. "You seem to be feeling better," he said. I was feeling much better. All those Arnold Temples had finally made it out of my body. We almost crashed into an antique floral vase, but then I jumped off Paul and we rolled across the area rug. Then we rolled onto the wooden floor. Then we rolled onto the bathroom tile. "I should probably get going," Paul said. "Already? I mean, this isn't exactly the date I'd pictured," I said. The date I'd pictured involved an East Village karaoke bar, a hypnotist, a Times Square Elmo, catching a t-shirt out of a t-shirt cannon, and one of those Chinese restaurants where they let you take home your leftovers in an aluminum foil swan. Date? He laughed the way people laugh sometimes. No, this wasn't a date. Wasn't it? Guys are so confusing. One minute they're finding any excuse to talk to you, the next they're moving to Minnesota for work and avoiding your calls, like happened with my ex Cameron and my ex Philippe. They must be doing a lot of hiring in Minnesota. I could show you a real date, though, he said. In that moment, he looked so sexy, almost as sexy as he'd looked the first time I'd seen him at the Apple store yesterday. It's amazing how time flies. Paul's jet black hair billowed under the air conditioner and his brown eyes glowed with brownness. Plus, there was something really familiar about him. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I'd like that, I meant to say, but it came out because I started staring at his biceps. I'll call you, he said, and was somehow out the door before I could put the drool I'd expelled back in my mouth. Back to work. Again. Sometimes guys said they were going to call you, and then you wouldn't hear from them until they publicly announced they were going to launch an unmanned car into space. Then suddenly they wanted to be in touch. What's so great about that anyway? Isn't it practically intergalactic littering? I didn't want to think about Paul and his rock-hard body, so I switched my phone off and put it in my desk drawer. Sophie and I were supposed to be prepping the photo studio anyway. Sophie had this idea that we should organize all the props by the dates and times of the photo shoots, but I thought it'd be more fun if she cleaned all the floors and left the props to me. After all, I was the one with the title of prop master. She seemed kind of sulky after that, so I put on some of the leather chaps and pretended one of the hay bales was a bucking bronco to try to make her feel better. But then she just said that I needed to quit horsing around. Horsing around? Couldn't she tell it was supposed to be a bronco? Use your imagination, Sophie. After lunch, Carrie told us one of the bigwig photographers was going to be there at 7 a.m. the next morning, and he'd be expecting a full craft services table. I didn't understand why he'd want to do crafts when we were already putting all these props together. Some people are just never satisfied. When I finally checked my phone later, I had a message from Paul. Did I want to go out tomorrow? Did I? What's with guys and rhetorical questions? He told me to meet him at 5th and Broadway at 8 p.m. and he'd have a surprise for me. There was nothing I liked more than meeting a guy I really knew nothing about near a park at night by myself and having him surprise me. What could make you feel more alive? Early riser. Whoever decided that 7 a.m. was an appropriate time to be anywhere should be arrested. No worse than arrested, they should be made to watch pre-roll YouTube ads or wear natural deodorant. I'm telling you, that stuff doesn't work. If you think it does, why do you seem to have fewer friends in the summer? The photographer, Milos Chikacek, was already there with all his camera equipment, turning the little knobs, adjusting the various light bulbs, and doing other photography-type things. "Ah, yes, you are the model, yes?" he said to me with his thick accent. He was clearly from somewhere foreign, probably Germany. "Me?" I said. "Yes, you, so beautiful. Come, stand over here." He pointed to the area in front of the camera. Sophie looked at me and I saw her roll her eyes. She was probably thinking, Germans, right? Tell me about it. "Oh, no, I'm the prop master, I said. I wanted him to know how important I was, and I wanted to remind Sophie who was in charge. Oh, too bad. Maybe the other model doesn't come, you step in." Milos really wasn't giving up, so I told him I'd think about it. Of course, he wouldn't be able to tell if I was thinking about it or not. Smart, right? Sophie said she had to excuse herself to get the craft services, but then she just came back with a big table of cheese and crackers and fruit plates. Do your job, Sophie. Personally, I couldn't concentrate because I kept thinking about Paul and what his surprise for me might be. I wondered what he looked like out of his Apple Store t-shirt and out of his Apple Store pants. I mean, who really wore khakis unless their job forced them to? I also wanted to know more about his personality. Was he a bad boy? A boy band boy? I realized I didn't really know anything about him. It was exciting. I wondered if Paul was a sexy loner who'd rolled into town for the sole purpose of breaking hearts. Or maybe he was a sexy loner who'd been bankrolled into town by some investment banker with a gambling problem, some card shark. Or is it card sharp? I never know. All day I tried to stay on the task at hand, lugging cans of tanning spray for the makeup artists, steaming pearl snap shirts, making sure fake guns were in their holsters, not to mention that I was the main one in charge of spraying all the models with water so they looked all glistening. Nobody asked me to, but I wanted to show that I had initiative. There were 2 guys and 2 girls, but none of them seemed as hot as Paul. Milos coached them to do a bunch of different things. Put your back to his front, then put your arm around his neck. Lift her up like you're presenting a cake. He is the horse and you are the jockey. Put your hands in each other's pockets like you're looking for loose coins. Man, this guy had vision. After we were all exhausted from all the different positions, I told Sophie that I felt like she was ready for the responsibility of getting everything cleaned up for the evening. Milos said he was taking the models to the VIP room at Bohemian Spirit. I saw Sophie roll her eyes again. Seriously? These Germans. Okay, now really, the date. Have you ever experienced something so powerful that you thought it was a near-death experience? Like you thought for sure you would die and never have to pay taxes again, or visit Florida for any reason? That's what my first night with Paul was like. It was like ecstasy, or Xanax if Xanax was a party drug. I'd breezed up to 5th and Broadway a few minutes after 8 in a black mini dress and blood-red strappy sandals, and was happy to see that Paul was wearing stylish gray jeans and a tight black t-shirt. Genius or not, he looked like a stud. If you told me he worked at the Apple Store, I would have called you a liar. I instantly gave him a hug and held him for a second so he could get a good whiff of my perfume. There was no way I'd spent $90 on eau de Vixen for him not to smell it. Wow, you're really pungent, he said. Thank you. I gave him a long wink. We walked up the street and Paul told me that he'd been in the city for 7 years, during which he'd acquired his pilot's license and a kitten named Jose. Now I knew why he was single. It's impossible to get a read on guys with cats. Like, are they pussies or not? Have you been to Escapade? He asked. Is that the club underneath the Brooklyn Bridge? Paul shook his head. The Queensboro Bridge? Paul shook his head. The Lincoln Tunnel? No? Huh, I've never been there then. It was exciting that Paul knew about some hot underground club I'd never heard of. He must really be in the know. But Paul was even more in the know than I thought. He took me to what looked to be an old warehouse. The paint was peeling off the building, the metal bars on the first floor windows were misshapen, and there was a brass door knocker on the front of the big wooden door. We had to knock 3 times before the bouncer would let us in. And the bouncer wasn't a regular bouncer. He was a guy dressed like a 1950s newspaper reporter with a hat and suspenders and a little white handkerchief in his pocket. He ushered us in and immediately locked the doors behind us. He asked if anyone had followed us. He seemed very anxious, and when I asked him what the matter was, he said we were in grave danger and pushed us into a small room with a desk and a pool table and a bunch of other old junk. He said he was locking the door for an hour, and we'd only be able to use our wits to escape. I was immediately alarmed and grabbed Paul's hand and shouted, "No, don't do this to us!" But the newspaper reporter was out the door before I could stop him or even ask why he was doing this. Paul didn't seem to be disturbed at all by the fact this guy was trying to hold us hostage and kept saying, "Calm down, it's going to be okay, it's just an escape room." Like calling it that made me feel calmer. I couldn't believe that he could be so cool under pressure. "We have to solve these clues," Paul said. But I thought, screw that. I'm going to get out of here if it means breaking through one of these walls with my fists. I started to bang on the walls with all the force of my body, but it made Paul look a little scared, so I thought, fine, let's do it your way. Even if we died, I didn't want him to think I was a psycho he was crazy to go out with. Paul started reading the clues and using a tiny golf pencil to answer them. Why is it that golf pencils are so tiny? I mean, golfers are regular size. Why don't they get normal pencils? Maybe they should call them jockey pencils or gymnast pencils. I made a mental note to write a letter to the editor about this with a regular-sized pencil. Though who was I kidding? I'd probably type the letter. The escape. After we survived the escape room, I was feeling pretty famished. Trying to bang your way through a wall really takes it out of you. We solved the clues, which were mostly a bunch of riddles, and Paul summoned the newspaper reporter to return. He had to hold me back from slapping the newspaper reporter for putting us in this dangerous situation. Luckily, a couple of slices from Two Brothers Pizzas calmed me down. What is it about pizza that can put you in a near catatonic state? Paul felt pretty bad that I'd been so shaken up by being locked in a room with no exits, so he suggested that next time I pick the location. That is, if you want there to be a next time? Paul looked like a sad little puppy then, and I realized I'd been so focused on trying to survive that I hadn't really connected with him. He might just be the newer, better, faster/slower lover I'd been looking for. I told Paul that next time I wanted to do something where we really got to talk, but for right now maybe we could just make out a little at this pizza place. He laughed a big laugh, and I could see his abs flex under his t-shirt. Maybe it was the pizza ovens, but I felt hot all over. He pulled me in close enough that I could smell the oregano on his breath, and then he kissed me softly. On the cheek. What a tease. Let's take things slow, he said. See what I was saying about guys with cats? He put his strong hands on my shoulders, and he said that he had so much more he wanted to share with me. Finally, we were getting somewhere. But, he said, uh-oh, where was this going? I have to get up early for a freelance job. What freelance job? I asked. The last thing I wanted was to find out Paul had some dumb side gig like building IKEA shelves for people or mining cryptocurrency. Oh, it's nothing, Paul said. That definitely meant it was something. The heartburn. Oh, pain. Oh, agony. Oh, regret. How many times does one swear they will never eat pizza after midnight again, and how many times are they destined to repeat the fatal error? Curse you two brothers, and your delicious pies masquerading as stomach-upsetting sleeper cells. There was no way I could go into work, not with the tomato sauce-induced heartburn and abdominal pain I was feeling. I couldn't focus. Pepperoni swirled around in my brain and made me feel dizzy and also slightly hungry. How is it that pizza is so delicious that even when you're reeling from it, you still kind of want some? I called Carrie and told her I was violently ill and held the phone over the toilet and flushed it a few times so that she knew I was serious and not just faking. She told me to take some Pepto-Bismol and lie down and that she and Sophie would take care of things. Ugh. I hated that Sophie was going to benefit from this. There's no way she'd be able to make the models glisten like I could. She seemed all scared when the guys had taken their shirts off yesterday, like she'd never seen 8-pack abs before. She probably only knew about 6. Poor, sheltered Sophie. I filled up a gallon jug with water and thought if I drank enough, maybe I could flush all the pizza out of my body. I gulped and tried to think about anything else, even though it pretty much felt like my esophagus was trying to escape from my throat. Stay in there, esophagus. Instead, I thought about Paul. He was everything I was looking for in a new lover. Probably. I thought of how hot he looked the night before, his brown eyes and long lashes, how sweet he'd been to suggest that I pick the next date spot, how his hands felt on my shoulders, how maybe his freelance job was a graphic designer or cake baker, a gigolo? Wait, was that still a thing? Were there still gigolos? I called Karen. I went out last night with this great guy, but what if it turns out he's a gigolo? Karen said, don't say that, so I said, fine, male escort. Everybody has to be so politically correct these days. She said she doubted that the Apple store was full of guys who also worked as escorts, and then she's tried to start telling me about some issue she was having with our neighbor, so I told her I had to get to a very important work call. Some people are just so focused on themselves. But maybe Karen was right, though. Who gets up early to be a gigolo? Back to normal. After spending a day in utter dough-based agony, I was finally feeling like myself again. I pledged to stay off the sauce indefinitely, or at least until the weekend. It's really hard to say no to a good margarita. I felt so good and light I practically skipped all the way to work, which is almost impossible to do in suede stilettos, but I was a brand new woman. Back at the office, I was worried that Sophie would have snagged my model spraying job, but luckily Carrie had decided that Sophie was only ready to handle the paperwork side of things. Whew, I couldn't care less about that. I could tell that Sophie was a little upset that I'd miss a day of work because she tried to hide it by going on and on about how yesterday there was a model working who was the hottest guy she'd ever seen. She pretended to fan herself and wipe sweat from her brow. Clearly she'd missed me and was trying to cover up her feelings. We had to do the buck wild call of the wild shoot, so a male model who came in was a real beast of a guy. I decided to give him a nickname, Beast. Imagine Jason Momoa, but with less facial hair. The makeup artists were actively discussing how they were going to apply fake fur to his face. I guess the idea was that he'd be turning into a wolf, or that he was a wolf turning into a man. Who knows what some women are into. While the makeup artists were mixing up the fake fur glue, Beast started talking to me by the cheese tray. He struck his hand out and said his name was Diego Rancho. Great, now I couldn't use his nickname anymore. He said he didn't want to seem too forward, but asked if I wanted to go out sometime. If this was going to be an occupational hazard, I could get into it. Is that what you'll be wearing? I pointed at his loincloth. He blushed. Not if things go well. I couldn't tell exactly what he meant by that, and the makeup artists were calling that the glue was ready. They tested it on Sophie, so I gave him my number and sprinted away. Suddenly it dawned on me, what about Paul? And why was it that guys were only interested when other guys were interested? Why were they never interested in one at a time? Well, there's no harm in going out with more than one guy at once. I mean, when has that ever backfired on anyone? A note. All afternoon, Diego, had to strike menacing yet seductive poses while emerging from a thick patch of fake grass. He'd crouch down with his bare shoulders bulging, or squat with his leg muscles straining, or stand and thrust his chest out like he was being raptured. Milos would yell things at him like, "You're an animal," and I'd have to switch on various fans so that the fur would look like it was blowing in the wind. I didn't think I was into the whole wolfman thing, but I could get behind this, or in front of it. Finally, we got all wrapped for the day, and Diego whispered in my ear that he was definitely going to call me. He'd put on his regular clothes then and was wearing peach-colored cargo shorts and flip-flops, and I wondered if it was too late to say, "Actually, don't. What's the point of even being ripped if you don't know how to dress?" Back at my desk, there was a single white rose in a vase with a handwritten note. I hadn't seen a handwritten note in months, probably 240 months. Geez, trying to read someone's handwriting was like trying to decipher ancient hieroglyphics. Not even new hieroglyphics, which are easier to read. Straining my eyes, I found the note to say, "Can't wait to see you again soon." What could that mean? I didn't know, but I could clearly make out who'd sent the note. It was Paul. He was still thinking about me and hadn't developed a case of intermittent amnesia like what happened with my ex, Claude. One minute you're having a fabulous time in a masquerade ball, and the next he's like, "Who are you?" every time you show up at his house. I had to think of something amazing for us to do on our next date. I started to ask Carrie for a suggestion, but I remembered I'd vowed to keep my work life and personal life separate. Then my phone dinged with a message from Diego. It was 3 eggplant emojis. Why are guys so cryptic? This has been section 2 of Torsos of Desire, read by the author, Nicole Beckley, and produced by Nicole Beckley. The music is from Blue Dot Sessions. Tune in to the next episode to find out what happens next.